recent Saturday morning, a number of Cape Elizabeth citizens came to take a tour of the middle school building. This shot shows some of the problems of deterioration of the outside, notably the column that does have a split in it caused by long-term water erosion as well as erosion around windows. We intend to keep this building, to renovate it, to bring it up to code, and to make it useful, to extend its already long and useful life. This shot is the so-called connector link, which also will be part of the renovation project. This is the inside of the middle school corridor right outside administration. There are two things. It looks rather shiny. We have been trying to get our custodial staff and want to compliment their attempts at keeping things clean. Unfortunately, you see the pipes up above, evidence of old leaks, and a general need for renovation. This would be part of the project that would need change in the mechanical systems, heating and electrical systems, as well as window wall, but other than that, minor renovation. Again, the leaks, this is evidence of leaks that have been pretty well taken care of by a re-roofing project, but we do have to deal with changing the heating pipes. This is a shot of the one science lab we have in grades 1 through 8. It is the remnants of the lab that was built for the original high school in 1960. It has long since served its useful life. The gas pipes are turned off. There is one operating sink in the room, and it is generally under-equipped for the demands of the current science curriculum. This is a part of the building that had the roof that was taken off. We have patched, but there is still leakage that comes in not only from the roof but through the window wall system. This shot is a pretty good indication of the window problems. Among other things, the pipes go right in front of the windows, making it difficult to open them fully. The shot also shows evidence of leakage in the window walls and again in the roof. This is a shot of the handicap ramp in the downstairs 7th grade classroom portion of the D wing. Walking now into the classroom portable section. That's the exterior of the portable so-called temporary classrooms. Walking across to the second middle school portable that houses a media center as well as a computer lab. These buildings must be replaced because they were put up only as temporary structures. Here is a tennis court in back, which we intend to keep as much of as possible in our renovation scheme. And looking around the outside of the building, you will see the temporary nature of those are not full foundations under these buildings. There is the D wing, which is slated to be removed. This is a shot of the middle school cafeteria. Note that it is below grade. We have considerable problems here with mold and paint that has to be scraped fairly frequently in order to remove fungicides. Again, pipes, old heating system needing to be replaced, re-engineered. This is certainly an inadequate space to feed 600 students a day. This room off the cafeteria and also below grade has to serve for our music room for grades 1 through 4, and in other words, the students have to walk across the esplanade. Hardly a spacious and gracious environment for the entire music program for Pond Cove. This is a bathroom off the cafeteria and the music room. We're going to spend a few minutes here just looking at the fact that the fixtures are antiquated. There is a lot of heating apparatus here as well as windows that definitely have need of being replaced. There is, although the material has been cleaned and scrubbed as much as can be done, it is still inadequate and inhospitable material for daily bathroom use. We do have many students in the middle school, as well as some in Pond Cove, who feel very uncomfortable using the bathroom facilities we have. In addition, we do have trouble with outmoded electrical heating apparatus, as well as pipes that clearly need to be rethought and replaced. This section emphasizes handicap accessibility. This is the corridor, the stairwell in the 30s building where a lift system was installed a few years ago. Obviously, this space was never intended to be fully handicap accessible. You can see the tight corners trying to get into bathrooms, and as you look up this stairwell, you can see that that lift has very sharp corners to turn. Frankly, it has been almost impossible to keep this lift running in dependable fashion. It does run, it does basically serve the need, but it is a far cry from what we really would like to have. In fact, our projected renovation plan does replace lifts in this building with an elevator, and does place one elevator in the middle school complex along with a combination of ramps that will make the entire building handicap accessible without having to have such extreme measures and frankly undependable measures. This is a shot of the administration and nursing and secretarial area in Pond Cove. It's crowded. For instance, the nurse's office doesn't even have running water. We use a small bathroom nearby. And here we have two secretaries as well as aides and assistants trying to help with the many, many phone calls during the day. Here's a shot of a teacher showing a student the model of the proposed renovated school, what it would look like when we got all through. We find a great deal of enthusiasm particularly among our students as well as our staff at the hope of a finished product. Here is a shot of one of the first grade classrooms in the main wing at Pond Cove. Here you see doors put over storage, which was required by fire code, and in many ways we have struggled to cope with changing curriculum requiring more individual pieces of equipment and trying to make the rooms as user-friendly as possible. This area of the building is slated mainly for renovation in the sense of replacing heating and windows. We also intend to include more storage because one of the principal problems of Pond Cove, outside of the windows and heating electrical systems, which is common to both buildings, is the intense problem we have with accommodating multi-units and multi-material now required by curriculum in a building that wasn't constructed with that in mind. The teachers do a remarkable job of making the rooms extremely. The dinosaur outside the classroom door is a welcoming figure, but this shot focuses on, again, storage issues. We have added metal lockers and student lockers to alleviate some of the concerns of fire codes. But as you walk down the corridor, you will notice that we're entering the temporary or portable structure that has been attached to the main part of Pond Cove. This is slated to be completely removed and other permanent construction. Some of the problems we're having with this right now, not only does it not give us sufficient storage, as shown with some of our pieces in the hallway, but also we have a problem with persistent leaks. Something about the way this building is attached to the main building has almost defied our abilities to prevent leaks, and we are having some deterioration also underneath the floorboarding of the temporary structure. However, as permanent structure replacing this will take care of these problems. This shot is an example of the many needs we have now for small spaces. In other words, using dividers, small furniture groupings for special classes, or for working with individual or small groups of students will be provided for in our renovation plan. This shot, or series of shots, illustrates how teachers have tried to use found space. This actually is a teacher assistant's office right to one side of a hallway, actually. And now we will pan into what is the teacher's room for the staff in Lunt Building. You will see that it is coming up here, and it is a very small space. In fact, it is a converted bathroom. But they managed to put a microwave and coffee equipment and a small refrigerator. Obviously, no. This shot illustrates the non-handicap accessibility problems associated with Lunt Building. The next shot illustrates some of the persistent plumbing problems we have in Lunt Building. Sink stoppage, sink overflow, and pipe replacement, all leading to major replacement of the system. Here's a scene where a light, the cover on a light fixture recently fell, fortunately not hitting a student, but could have. We have removed the rest of them to prevent something like that happening in the future. And again, another example of the lack of storage. What you're seeing here is a teacher putting aside baskets which we use to supplement the storage possibilities of our lockers. And to her side, or here, what she's pushing now, are classroom visual aids for which there is no other space for storage. This sequence of shots shows what passes for science material storage. This is on the side of one corridor. And science storage at the grade 2 and 3 level for Lunt Building is a real acute problem. Not only do we have to use recesses in the hallway, but this shot shows a janitor's closet, mops and pails included, various equipment, and off to one side, as you will see, this is a spot that the teachers use to try to store some of their multi-science equipment. Hardly adequate. The only spot available for the teacher phone for necessary calls home in the Lunt Building is this small space in the hallway, not really conducive to truly confidential and delicate conversations. Here you see staff working on necessary preparation of materials, once again in what is essentially a storage cabinet containing janitorial materials of one kind or another. Another indication of lack of space. This is a cafeteria at Pond Cove. Actually, it is in fact an all-purpose room used part of the day, as in fact it is being used here as a lunchroom, and then it becomes a gym both before and after the lunch periods. As a gym, it is, however, less than satisfactory. The pillars are protected but should not be in a place where children are running, as they need to do for a gym program. In addition, we also have to store the cafeteria tables here. This series of shots once again reinforces the lack of space. This is a teacher assistant space in Pond Cove, really a storage closet off the cafeteria. Now the stairwell going up to the original part of Pond Cove, and occasionally for extra work, desk in the hall. Finally, our pit area, which is a former boiler room, which the fire department tells us is probably the best place for us to use for storage. But it would need a lot of renovation before it was satisfactory for that purpose. And finally, the heating elements all need to be replaced. This one at a dangerous level for students in the corridor. Extremely important to ask the citizens of this town to pay attention to the referendum. I have really appreciated the fact that we've done, I think it's 4 Saturday morning tours with 3 more to go, and probably 75 people who are not directly related to the schools have taken advantage of that opportunity so far. What I find fascinating is the list of questions that people have and the issues that they raise, ranging from, you've got to be kidding, it can't possibly cost $11 million to fix the heat and the electricity and a few lights and so forth. I do think, to be perfectly honest about it, if people hang in there for the 2 hours, and sometimes people can't, and for a variety of reasons they come and ask a few questions and then leave, we appreciate everybody who has shown up, whether they're in agreement with the referendum or not. We really do appreciate you taking the time. It's a complex issue. It is one that is hard to explain quickly. We are, and I think other members here would like to talk about the efforts to publicize in the upcoming supplement, and we are really anxious to reach out and give information, open the door, let people ask these questions and have a discussion. I cannot emphasize enough that there isn't any attractive, low-cost alternative. There simply isn't. Now, I recognize that having said as much, people are going to believe that somewhere down the line there's a $5 million solution to this, and we are struggling to put enough data together in a variety of ways. Both, we have a middle school parents association meeting coming up Thursday. We hope that many parents or non-parents, for that matter, in the community will take advantage of that, whether or not you have students in the middle school. We'd love to see people who are not normally associated with the schools there also. The meeting is in the cafeteria at the middle school. We think it's important for people to see that space and to be there long enough to realize some of the mustiness and the dank atmosphere and the, frankly, just kind of a general sense of being suffocated when you're down there, and realize that this is a significant issue. Somehow, I find in talking to people that they tend to think that because it's a cafeteria, we're talking about 20 minutes with a youngster eating lunch, and why can't they eat lunch in some corridor somewhere? Why do we have to have a cafeteria? I think it's important, again, for the community to understand that when we're talking about building a cafeteria space, it would be a wonderful addition to the community services program. The way this program is outlined, or the way the model, this concept design is outlined, that's a capacity for 600 people, adults as well as students. It does have would have a small stage. It could become an assembly area. We have nothing, K-8, well, 1-8, with the kindergarten and the high school, that even remotely comes close to a suitable assembly area, and we haven't said a whole lot about that, but we have youngsters who regularly participate in various kinds of dramatic programs and other in their private life, and we know that we have youngsters who are interested in, would love to be more participative in that kind of thing. We're badly hampered, but the community can use that. There are choral arts societies, or the chamber groups or various other groups that this community is involved with. And the Spurwing Church is a nice place to go to for a concert, but it would be nice to have some place that is heated in the winter that would lend itself to that kind of activity that would, again, be important for the community. There are just all kinds of issues that we need to make sure that people are aware of. I think it would be really counterproductive for the referendum to fail simply because it was complex. I do hear also from people that there's somehow a Cape Elizabeth tradition to take 2 passes at any issue, that you automatically fail the first time out. I just simply have to say, why? I mean, we have studied this issue, and part of our information is to try to make it clear to people that this has been well studied. I don't think we can study it a whole lot more. In fact, I wouldn't recommend that we spend any more money on study. And I think that I would just question, why does it take 2 referenda if somebody, I guess the only reason I can come up with is that people are convinced that somewhere there is a less expensive plan. I would really like an opportunity, and I know other members of the building committee. We've all offered our time in a variety of settings. I just hope that people will really come forward, ask questions, come to the meeting. We have another board meeting on the 26th. We really invite people. Once again, we're going to hold it in the middle school cafeteria. We think that's an opportunity for people to get a mini tour if they don't want to do the whole thing. Please read the supplement. Please call. Please ask questions. Please don't not vote just because you don't know the answers. We really want to give you information.
Charlie?
It's interesting. I was one of 2 building committee members who joined Connie last Saturday, and the first hour was spent in the lobby of the middle school answering questions. And it was interesting, by the time we got through the tour the next hour, how some of the people who asked the questions seemed much more convinced that something needed to be done. So I avail everybody out there in the next 3 Saturdays to take advantage of these tours. One of the things we've heard is that people have not gotten enough information, and it's come very late, even though we've been studying this for 3 years. One of the ways of finding out some information is to take a first-hand look at it and ask some first-hand questions.
I just did want to comment to some of the people who I have spoken to, or people like them who may not understand. The building committee is not made up of the superintendent and the school board. It was made up of 2 school board members, 2 town councilors, 7 other members of the community who are professionals who have served as volunteers. And the town manager and the superintendent are ex officio members of this. And that, as has been stated a few moments ago, this is not something that we threw together in 6 months. This has been a 3 to 5 year study. When I was on the town council, this plan for space study began as a result of, in part, the building of 3 portable structures. And what a lot of people who have moved in town in the past 5 years, or people like me whose students are no longer in the elementary or the middle schools, may not understand is our portables permits are up soon, and having sat on the town planning committee meetings, those permits are not necessarily likely to be renewed. So we have some real issues, and that's why I said, as policy chair, we have been dealing with what might happen if some of the space that we currently have available to us is no longer usable for our students. And our student population is increasing, not decreasing. So I would ask people who are making judgments about, well, the school was good enough for me or good enough for my students, it's good enough for the kids that are there, to please come and take the tour. If not take the tour, at least take a look at this, because there are a lot of issues besides the $11.7 million price tag that go with this. And I would suggest to people who maybe haven't studied the issue as much as they could, it won't be cheaper if we come back a year from now. It won't be the same people coming back a year from now. And some of the solutions may no longer be available because those options have closed. So when people go to vote November 2nd, please be informed on the issues and not just the price. Thank you.
Well, you have all said very eloquently a number of very important things, and so as Finance Chair, I'm just going to add one thing from my perspective of having dealt with this issue for now almost 6 years. This is my 6th year on the school board, and I think in one way or another, I have been dealing with building problems ever since I was elected. But looking at it from a banking or a financial point of view, there's no doubt whatsoever in my mind that this first has to be done. And second, there has never been a better time to do it. Interest rates have never been lower, so the cost of our borrowing would be reduced. And the slackness in the construction industry means that we're going to get, when we go out to bid, the very best price. So this is really, truly a time to seize the opportunity and get this behind this community.
I have a question for the Finance Chair. Peter, is it your understanding that this bond issue is going to ask for an authorization of up to $11.7 million? Instead of borrowing of $11.7 million. I think that some people are confused, that they think that if they vote to approve 11.7, that the entire 11.7 will be spent, when in fact I believe the wording is up to.
Up to is my understanding. I don't have it in front of me, but you know, certainly when we go out to bid, we would take the lowest bid, and if that were under $11.7 million, you know, that would be, you know, to our benefit. And I'm convinced that the bidding for this job, if it's approved, will be very, very competitive.
Thank you.
I just wanted to mention that the Cape Courier would have a 4-page spread for people to read about, and there will be a direct mail piece going to every home, so that information will be coming out, and if you have questions on that, to please call.
Okay, I'd just like to point out a couple of things that haven't been mentioned. There is going to be a call-in TV show on the local cable station from 7 to 8 next Monday, October 18th. It'll be held right here. There'll be a variety of people here. Connie will be here, school board, building committee members, the architects. So I hope people will call in and ask their questions if they can't get to one of the tours or one of the other meetings. That's a good opportunity. Also, there's information, all the reports from both committees, the School Space Study Committee and the Building Committee. The reports, the complete reports are in the library. They include the minutes, so you can see what the thinking was of both committees. I think that does alleviate some people's anxieties that all the options have not been studied. In fact, when I went back and read them, having been on both committees, I was astonished, really, at how often we talked about looking for the, you know, most cost-effective plan we could. I just want to reiterate to people that every single person on these committees is also a taxpayer in Cape Elizabeth. You know, we're not just foisting this on people as some, you know, Cadillac plan here. And I think if anybody's been reading the Portland Press Herald lately, there are a whole lot of schools out there building right now, and this plan is quite cost-effective in comparison to many, so I suggest people read those articles, see what other school systems are getting for their money, and I think you'll agree that we're getting a pretty good deal. Okay, the next item is unfinished business, second reading.
antiquated interiors, heating systems, lighting systems. They must be replaced. I hope the community will support that referendum. Thank you.
And I was just wondering if now would be an appropriate time for Connie to mention again the two tours that are remaining, because I know it's been written, but some people are auditory.
Yes, this Saturday morning, beginning at 10. It does take about 2 hours to go through the two buildings. We do try, the administration, whoever's available, myself, do try to stop and answer questions, to point out various issues. I will certainly point out this particular issue to people on Saturday. There are a few others I point out. We did the first one this past Saturday. We had a fairly small group, and most of the people, frankly, who were there were people who had been through the building and who were there in support, but there were some who perhaps had been through either as parents or community people who came to ask questions. I think that I'm finding it extraordinarily difficult to have people understand the scope of the problem. I mean, it's the kind of thing that sounds like you ought to be able to do a little patch-up, fix-up. You know, how can you possibly spend $11.7 million on putting in light fixtures? Well, obviously, it's not just light fixtures. And it does take 2 hours to even begin to get a handle on the dimension of the problem and why it is so widespread and why those are old and tired buildings, but we cannot really afford to bulldoze them and start all over again. There are all kinds of interconnected issues here. I thought some of the comments at last night's public hearing were absolutely on target, that it is in fact everything is connected to everything else, and it's impossible to do one small piece. The community, of course, has been band-aiding. The roof piece band-aids. The various other things that have gone on are band-aids, and at some point I've been asked repeatedly to put a dollar figure. I will clearly report back to the board next month exactly what it's costing us to replace those in man hours as well as material. I cannot put a dollar figure on the fear. And I think that I do not want to panic parents. I do not want to panic teachers. And I do not yet see the conditions so bad that they're totally out of control. But I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't tell you about things like that.
Also, I did not watch the town council meeting. I'm sorry, I was absent. I had another commitment. Was there any discussion as to what would happen if the referendum failed?
We did mention, it's certainly my belief, that there is no alternative. If the referendum fails, we'll be back in May. If it fails in May, we'll be back in November, and it is not going to change much. It is conceivable that there could be some shading of some things here and there, but a very, very good building committee with two of the best architectural firms as far as school buildings are concerned in the area have spent 3 years sorting this issue out. I do not see how we can have a much more cost-effective plan than what we have and still take care of the problems. And frankly, it's a moment of truth for this little town. I mean, it's that serious. These are buildings that cannot be inhabited for many more years without major work. The question is, do you want to continue to patch up with light? I don't know if the light fixture is going to fall down next. I don't know those things.
Peter?
Well, I think a number of things were said about what would happen if it didn't pass, and I was at the meeting, but I didn't speak. But one theme that was mentioned 2 or 3 times was that if this does not pass, that we will end up paying as much, probably more, in a decline in our real estate values than we would pay if our taxes went up. And the reason for that, I remember one speaker said, is that people who come to look at the schools in Cape Elizabeth will see the deplorable state of these schools. The word will get around, it already is getting around, I'm sure, that these schools must be replaced. There really is no rational alternative. And so we will suffer if we don't do this. And that was a very, I can't remember how many speakers said that, but it was 4 or 5 really starkly stated that economic price that we would pay if we don't do this. Now, I think, frankly, that's not a big deal compared to the safety issue that we just heard about. And safety, incidentally, was mentioned, too. And, come to think of it, I will not soon forget standing before most of you a few years ago and awarding a plaque to an engineer who happened to catch a fatal flaw in one of our patch procedures, which, had he not caught it, probably would have resulted in a very serious accident. So safety is an obvious theme that we heard a lot about last night.
I think the most chilling comment that was made, and certainly in light of seeing this the very next day, was the woman who said, "How will we feel if something happens to one of our kids?" And unfortunately, we come perilously close, I think. I would like to mention a few other opportunities for people to get information that are set right now or to tour the buildings. And one is at the Pond Cove Fair, which is going to happen on Sunday, September 26th from 11 to 3, or 11:30 to 3:30. There will be tours offered. There will be information there for people to pick up. Also, tomorrow night at the Community Services sign-up, we will hopefully have the model there, the site plans, information, and some people who can answer questions. And the Middle School Parents Association has scheduled a meeting for us to come talk to them about the building issue. It's October 14th at 7 o'clock, and middle school parents will certainly be receiving more information about that, but they've also graciously invited middle school parents to bring others, bring neighbors, bring whoever they can get interested to come to that meeting. So those are some things that are set right now.
I would just like to make a comment on a reality. And a reality in this community is we're giving tours of the middle school in Pond Cove. I think people should also take a tour of the high school and see the disparity of what we allow 400 students to inhabit, which seem to be relatively safe, spacious environments, and where we subject 1,300 of our smaller students to uninhabitable, unsafe conditions. And I think this community needs to get out, not just look at those two schools, but look at the disparity in what we have in this system. I can remember coming on the school board 4 years ago, and my only exposure to this system was essentially the middle school and the elementary. The only exposure to the high school had been the gymnasium, the pool, and the auditorium. And I was awestruck when I took a tour after I was elected of the high school. I just could not believe the difference in this system. And in that first year I was on the board is when we had our roof fiasco. And a year after I came on the board, Connie Goldman came on board, and we had, due to the town council, initiated a school space study committee. So this is an ongoing study for the last 3 years. And I really took a lot of issue with some of the comments last night by people who felt they were uninformed about what was going on. And I believe out of 2 reports that have come out of the last 3 years of extensive studies of these facilities, that people are still in the dark. And for an educated community that supports education, that really alters.
Well, I was just going to say, I certainly know that there are a lot of good people who are working on getting flyers, getting out there, talking to people. I just hope we can get enough people's attention.
Oh, I wanted to echo what Charlie was saying, and as my son passed on to the 9th grade this year, and his friends, were around my house, the comments about that disparity were really, quite. They were blown away. They thought they didn't know there was a nirvana out there. Well, it's not exactly nirvana, but it's a pretty run-of-the-mill high school. But what they've been accustomed to made it look like one. And I must say, with my 5 years on the school board, I think I've had the opportunity one way or another to visit every school in Greater Portland. And if I were moving here, as one of the speakers suggested last night, and looking around, I think the contrast would be very startling. And in spite of our fine reputation for education in this community, I don't think we'll be able to sustain it for another decade if we don't replace these buildings, because we simply don't measure up to our surrounding community, to our competitors, in effect.
And I really think we really aren't replacing the building. We're doing extensive renovation with some new construction. And again, there was another issue that was brought up last night about the D-wing, the famous D-wing. And I think there's a misconception out there that if you take away the window walls, and if you have to shore up the structure itself to put a brand new roof on, you're talking more than what it would cost for new construction. And the choice made by the building committee to tear that facility down, those were the considerations we discussed and the different alternatives. I mean, we came up, there must have been, we were up to what, F? Or the number of plans beyond that, the number of G. So we were up to that number of different options before we finally settled on the one that we did. And we really looked for the most cost-efficient ways of dealing with our problem. And we looked for common solutions in new construction, things that could be shared by both schools. So that's where the connector link came. So we could share a cafeteria, so that we could create a gym that could be used for swing space for either school. I think it was a very, somebody asked, was that waiting for a conservative member of the building committee to comment? I think every member on that building committee was very conservative in the options that came out. It was very cost conscious.
I think if you read through the minutes, which are in the report, which is at the library to find out, you can see that there is a constant theme, not only of trying to look under every single rock and trying to anticipate every single question, but that constant feeling of responsibility not to spend too much money, to spend what we need to spend, to do a responsible job, but not to overspend. There was nobody interested in overspending. The other thing I'd just like to add to what Charlie said about the common space, we were not only looking at creating common space where we could have some cost efficiency, but we tried to make that very community-friendly space, very accessible to the community for performances, for gym space. You know, it's right at the front of the building where it would be very accessible to the community, so that was a big consideration also.
This is going to sound flip, but I don't mean it that way. If Rick DeFusco and his high school staff could put a barbecue on for the kindergarten students like they did for the freshmen tonight, except put a middle school parking lot and make the parents eat in the middle school cafeteria. And if we did that for each grade from now until the referendum, people would know. And so if people aren't coming to the free walking tours, perhaps we should add a little incentive to get people there, because they really will understand the problem when they see it.
You know, that really is part of our problem. You know, you've touched on it, and several of you have touched on it. How do we get the message of the reality out there? How do you do that? We have spent...
Work tonight.
Yeah. But I mean, you think of the figure that Connie flashed up at the hearing that showed that the cost of the high school in 1970, in dollars adjusted to 1993, is about the same as this project. Yet this project is going to accommodate twice as many students. Now,
That's not a gold-plated Cadillac. That's not a Cadillac. That's not gold-plated. That's a Chevy with a standard shift. But how do you get people to find that out the way we have found that out? I like your idea. I'll go to that picnic too.
Rick, you have your orders. Okay, are we,
Well, I feel like I'm perseverating on this topic.
okay.
I thought that was the last item on the agenda.
No.
I'm sorry.
You got anything else? Okay. Well, let's see, we'll move on to the DA 504 committee.